Most people think they're wasting money on woodworking materials because they're buying the wrong wood. That's not it. The real issue starts much earlier, before you even step into the lumber yard. You find a project you want to build. Maybe it's a table, a bench, or something simple for your home. The plan looks clean, the finished piece looks solid, and everything seems straightforward enough to start. So you commit. You buy the wood. You clear your weekend. You start cutting. And somewhere along the way, things stop lining up. A measurement feels slightly off. A joint doesn't close the way it should. You double-check the diagram, but it skips over the exact step you're stuck on. So you make a judgment call. You adjust. You trim. You try to make it fit. And that's when the waste begins. Not because you chose the wrong material, but because you were forced to guess. At first, it's small. A board cut too short. A piece you can't reuse. Maybe $10 or $20 gone. But then it compounds. You realize the materials list didn't account for something properly. You're missing a piece. Back to the store. Or worse. The structure is already assembled. And now something is off, by just enough that the whole thing feels unstable. That's $60 in lumber. It's no longer usable for the project you started. So you either scrap it or try to salvage it into something else. Either way, you're paying for the same mistake twice. And after a few experiences like that, a pattern starts to form. You hesitate before starting new projects. You second-guess measurements. You spend more time researching than building, trying to avoid another failed attempt. From the outside, it looks like a material problem. Like wood is expensive. Like mistakes are just part of the process. But that explanation is too shallow. Because not all projects lead to wasted material. Some builds go smoothly. Every cut fits. Every joint closes. You buy exactly what you need and nothing more. So what's different? At first glance, people assume it's skill. That experienced woodworkers just make fewer mistakes. And while skill does play a role, it's not the core issue. Because even beginners can complete clean builds when the structure guiding them is solid. And even experienced builders run into problems when that structure is missing. Think about what actually happens when you follow most plans. They show you what the final piece should look like. They give you some measurements. They outline a few steps. But they often skip the most critical part, the transition between steps. How one cut affects the next. What order things need to be assembled in. Where tolerances matter, and where they don't. So you're not really following a plan. You're interpreting one. An interpretation is where inconsistency creeps in. Two people can follow the same vague instruction and end up with completely different results. One gets lucky. The other wastes $80 in material. Now here's where it gets more interesting. Because the real issue isn't that the plan is wrong. It's that the plan is incomplete. It looks finished on the surface clean diagrams. Nice layout, but underneath, it's missing the operational detail required to execute it in the real world. So every time you build from something like that, you're filling in the gaps yourself. And every gap is a risk that multiplies with every cut you make. This is why the same person can feel confident one weekend and completely stuck the next. Not because their ability changed, but because the structure they relied on did. The real issue isn't the cost of materials. It's the absence of a fully defined build path. When that path is unclear, every decision becomes a potential point of failure. And when decisions stack up, so does waste. Now compare that to a different scenario. You start with a plan that doesn't just show the end result, but walks you through the entire process. Every cut is defined. Every measurement is verified. Every step follows a clear order that's been tested before. You're not guessing. You're executing, and something shifts. You move faster, not because you're rushing, but because you're not stopping to figure things out. You buy materials once. You cut with confidence. And when you reach the final step, the piece comes together the way you expected it to. No leftover boards you can't use. No mid-project corrections. No second trip to fix something that should have been clear from the start. At that point, it becomes obvious. Material waste was never the root problem. It was just the visible symptom of something deeper. A missing structure. A lack of clarity between intention and execution. And once you see that, you start approaching projects differently. You stop asking, what should I build? And start asking, what system am I using to build it? Because the difference between wasting $100 in wood and finishing a project cleanly is rarely about effort. It's about whether the path you're following has already been proven to work. If you want to go deeper into that, there's a structured breakdown linked in the description that walks through how complete plans are actually designed and why they change the entire building process. And if you want to keep exploring how to avoid common mistakes like this, you can subscribe. Most people don't need more motivation to build. They need fewer unknowns.